Welcome back to Discern. My name is Mark Matthews, joined again by Nick Pitts, fellow at the Institute for Global Engagement. Nick, thanks again for being here. How you doing, sir?
Hey, Mark. Great to be here with you.
Well, we're going to wrap up. The last 4 episodes of Discern, we've unpacked, COVID, how we got here, some different things, different media stories, different aspects of this pandemic and how it's impacted our life. We're going to wrap things up today and really kind of stop down on the individual's response to COVID, to COVID-19, to related policies and things like that. If you're like me at all, you've probably said at some point, I'm over it. I'm over COVID. And as laughable as that is, I think as individuals, we try to take control over something that is obviously well outside of our control. But I think it's because we're 2 years in, and there have been so many ups and downs, and times when we felt like the pandemic was almost over, and times when it felt like it's just begun, and the changing of policies and CDC recommendations, and everybody's trying to do their best to address it. I think what's really interesting related to our individual response is how even among my close friends, friends that I would say are similar to me, in terms of potential backgrounds or how we were raised or even our worldview, people that are very similar to one another, their individual response to COVID-19 can be so different. Some people are fearful. Some people kind of dismissed it from the very beginning. Some people tried to follow the rules very closely for a while and at this point have just given up out of either frustration or fatigue. And again, talking about people who are relatively similar in so many other ways. So Nick, as you think about this question, why do you think it is that there's such a varied response to COVID policies, things like that, even amongst a group of people that otherwise are pretty similar?
Yeah, I think it goes back. There's a sociological concept to it, and then there's probably, it reminds me of my buddy Wade growing up. And so Wade and my buddies wanted to jump off a bridge into a river. We didn't know how deep it was. And so Wade was the first one to say, I'm going to jump off the bridge. I don't care how deep it is. And so Wade decided he would be the first one to jump off, and then the rest of us followed suit thereafter. Wade had a very small pool of what sociological terms we would call a finite pool of worry. He just didn't have a lot of worries in the world. He had a great risk appetite, whereas the vast majority of us on that bridge that day had a little bit bigger of a pool of worry about what could go wrong of jumping off a bridge into a body of water, which we didn't know how deep it was. But Wade was just a little bit more risky, had a greater risk appetite and a smaller pool of worry. And what we're continuing to see as this pandemic plays out is that individuals have varying pools of worries. There's some individuals that are triple vaxxed. They are still wearing a mask. They're still turning down opportunities to go out. And in the land of the free and the home of the brave, they have an opportunity to be able to withdraw from society until they have a greater comfort, and they're less willing to take particular risks. Whereas there's a lot of Wades, as we're finding out in the land of the free right now. Individuals that are, there's some individuals, I believe the number's around 17% that have not gotten any type of vaccination right now. There are individuals that are less likely to wear masks. And it doesn't matter what particular political party that they are. They just have a smaller pool of worry. And then 2, they have a greater appetite for risk. And they're willing to take that particular plunge, what have you. And so what we're continuing to see play out, regardless of political ideology, regardless of gender, regardless of race, is that individuals just have varying degrees of pools of worry and varying risk appetites.
So even more than an element of faith, perhaps, you touched on political leanings and things like that. This is just the way they were born, just a personality component to them, the Wades of the world that just they're either not worried or they just haven't thought about it enough to consider worrying about it.
I think in our world, there's just an increased emphasis upon politics right now, and we're trying to find politics in everything that we do. I would say that that's not necessarily a good thing, but it is a thing that we're experiencing right now. And so politics is making its way into sports. It's making its way, obviously, in DC. It's making its way into finance. It's infecting everything. And I think if we take the politics out of the vaccine conversation that's happening right now, what we're just continuing to see is that individuals just are different than one another, and they have different degrees. And even among Christians, there's a various different responses to this pandemic. There's going to be some, and just to tell your viewers, I'm of that side. I think it's an opportunity to take the vaccine, to take the appropriate health measures in order to be able to love your neighbor and to protect them. I'm reminded of the parable in which the individual lowers his friend down in the hole in the roof. And it wasn't the lame man's faith that made him well. It was the friends that did the act of lowering that made the man well, according to Jesus. And I want my faith in God and manifested in taking these good graces of vaccines, etc., to help make my community well so I can lower the spread. But I know that there are individuals that disagree with me, and that's completely okay. They're a little bit more hesitant towards the vaccine. They're more hesitant towards recommendations that say relative to the mask or social distancing, etc. And then that's where the biblical principle comes in of just figuring out, according to Colossians 4, how do we bear with one another in love? Understanding that we might not agree on mask protocols and vaccine mandates or taking vaccines, but we can all agree that Jesus is Lord, He's King, and He calls us to love Him and to love our neighbors as ourselves.
That's great. So you'd say even within Christian circles, there is room for difference of opinion and difference in behavior, whether it's related to masks, whether it's related to vaccines, whether it's related to, how out in the open you might be, going to restaurants, taking trips and things like that. There's room for differences there, but the unifying component that should be there is love ultimately, and pointing to Christ as our Savior, our trust is in Him. And, whether or not this pandemic is coming for us or whether or not it's overblown, we can discuss that cordially among friends. But we have to have that central theme of love. And if that's not there, then we've got a problem.
Yeah, without love, we sound like a clanging gong, according to Paul in 1 Corinthians 13, right? I come from the Baptist tradition, and so whenever there's 10 Baptists that are gathered, there's usually 11 or 12 opinions that are there. And so we're known to disagree one with another. And that's okay. We follow a God that says in Isaiah 1, come and let us reason together. There's beauty in disagreement, as we saw in Acts 15 at the Council of Jerusalem. Like there's great beauty that comes in disagreeing one with another. And now the key part is to be able to respond one with another and to reason together. That doesn't mean that we're going to be of the same mind, but it does mean that we're going to have the same unifying purpose, that Jesus is Lord, one, of our lives, and two, we're trying to make His kingdom come and His will be done on earth as it is in heaven. There will be disagreements when it comes to Mass. There will be disagreements when it comes to gatherings and vaccines. But at the end of the day, we can't make vaccines the ultimate thing. When we make vaccines the ultimate thing, we miss the big picture. We settle for mud pies when God is offering us a vacation by the sea.
So what would you say, Nick, as you're, let's say you're talking to Wade and you're more worried, you have more worry and he has less related to COVID-19 or any other risky endeavor, let's say. What would be some things that you might say to him to try to bring him to you, not to change his mind, but to bridge that gap a little bit? What are some ways to approach that conversation?
I think you hit it on, and we just need to reemphasize it at the very beginning. The key point is not for me to win him over. The key point is for me to show him love. At the end of the day, that we're going to be known by our love in John 13, and we're not going to be known by our agreement one with another. My love of Wade can't be contingent upon his agreement with me. And so I want that to be the main thing. He's my friend, and that's why I'm engaging with him. And the second thing I would say is the reality of what my grandma always taught me. He who asks the questions in the conversation has the power. We saw that demonstrated with Jesus. Jesus was always prone, instead of making an assertion, asking a question. I think getting to a better understanding of not just what this person is espousing and why they disagree with me, but also getting to the root of that as well, I think has great power for you to be able to try to persuade them or to try to move them to your way. And then 3, just recognizing that Rome wasn't built in a day, and that these conversations have got to be shown and got to be conducted in a way that is speaking truth to one with another, but also doing so with grace. I don't want to just speak truth without grace, because then I've just got a bat and I'm pummeling the person instead of persuading them. I don't want it to be grace without truth, because then it's just a pillow fight and nobody's better because of it. I want there to be truth with grace. And from that particular point, that's when I think you can start, regardless of whatever side, regardless of the outcome. I think both parties are better because of it.
That's a great reminder. A pastor once said, it's truth and grace. It's not truth 50% and grace 50%, but both truth and grace all the way turned up to 100. So that's a great reminder. And Nick, I appreciate that. And I think this is a great way to wrap up our little mini series talking about COVID and how it continues to impact our lives and all different directions. And hope you all enjoyed that as well. We're going to be back here next week on Discern, unpacking another culturally relevant topic and hopefully engaging it from a Christian perspective. So thanks again, Nick, for joining us, and we'll see you guys next time on Discern.